there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is going to be the Sisterhood of the World book tag. I was tagged by Cheryl from CR Flames Fan, and I will link her channel below. And she filmed this tag outdoors with a big, beautiful Alberta sky behind her, so it's worth watching just for the background. At least if you live in a city with a lot of smog or a lot of humidity, like some of us do. I've seen versions of this tag go around before where you have to make up your own questions at the end, and that always seems like a lot of work. But with this one, you get to use the same questions. So, question number 1 is, what is your favorite song, and pick a book that relates to it. I would probably say that my favorite song is V&V Nation's Beloved. I'm going to pick Joseph Boyden's 3-Day Road, which is about a First World War veteran in a canoe having flashbacks to both his childhood and the war, thinking mostly about his best friend, who he had kind of a brotherly relationship with, who died in the war, and friendship and complicated stuff. And the song Beloved is someone talking about loss. It's implied to be more of a romantic relationship, but it has that same kind of longing / loss to it. So I would say emotionally that's kind of a similar theme. And I'll put a link to the song below if you want to listen to that. Question number 2 is, give a LGBT plus and or diverse book recommendation. And for that I'm going to recommend one of my favorite books of all time, which is The Quiet Violence of Dreams by Kay Salo Duiker. This is one of those books that completely blew me away when I read it the first time, probably about 15 years ago. And I have since read this every couple of years since then, and every year I get something else out of it. It is a story about life in Cape Town right around the year 2000, and it's one of those portraits of life in a city that gets all of the little bits and pieces, and you think about the specific sense of place, but also the sense of the grandness of history and the really narrowness of an individual's life. And it's representative of the time and place, and deals a lot with mixing languages and the interaction of cultures and of nationalities. And the main character is working out his framing for his sexuality and what it means to be living in South Africa before it was 10 years post-apartheid and all of that. I don't just recommend this as a LGBT plus book. I recommend this as something everyone should read because this is brilliant. But yes, it fits the category of that question. Question number 3 is, who is your favorite morally gray character? And for that, I'm going to pick the character Caravaggio from In the Skin of the Lion and The English Patient. If you've seen the movie of The English Patient, that's the character that was played by Willem Dafoe in the movie, although in the books he's from Toronto, not from Montreal. I always think they only made that change to explain Juliette Binoche's accent in the movie version of The English Patient. But in any case, he's a thief, he's a spy, he's complicated. He's definitely a very interesting and complicated character. Question number 4 is your biggest pet peeve with books. My biggest pet peeve with books is the paperbacks that are bound with that glue that when it ages dries up to a point that it falls apart and then the books crumble and the pages come out. A lot of mass market paperbacks have that, and especially a lot of the sort of budget editions of classics. Like I know I had a copy of War and Peace that basically disintegrated. I think I had a copy of Moby Dick that disintegrated. Which is probably my fault for buying the budget editions of those, but in my defense, it was in my youth, and still, it's irritating. Question number 5 is, what is your favorite poem? My favorite poem is probably Wilfred Owen's Strange Meeting. That's the one, it seemed out of battle I escaped down some profound dull tunnel, etc., about being dead and meeting the enemy you killed in the afterlife, more or less. It's good and depressing, as all First World War poetry should be. I'll include a link to that below. Question number 6 is the last book that you DNF'd and why. The last book that I didn't finish was Yoon-Ha Lee's 9 Fox Gambit, which I talked about in not my last wrap-up, but I think the one before that. I took it back to the library without finishing it because the central concept behind all the technobabble turned out to be very simple and a bit fantastical rather than science fiction-y, and it irritated me. I'll probably take the book back out of the library at some point, but I was just not in the mood to continue reading it. Question number 7 is, what does a 5-star book have to have for you? And for me, a 5-star book has to have both entertainment and a high level of craft. I will read books that are fun trash and thoroughly enjoy them. But if they're not actually well crafted, I'm not going to give that a high rating. And similarly, sometimes I'll read a book and I'll really admire the style of the writing or the ambition that went behind, or the innovation behind the writing. But if I don't enjoy it, that's not going to be highly. So it has to have that balance of both things for me. I give almost nothing 5 stars. I've seen a lot of people doing the 5-star predictions, and I just can't do them because I, in general, don't give more than, I think last year I gave maybe 4 books 5 stars. I've had some years where I give 1 book 5 stars. So it's just not something that I do very often. Question number 8 is, if you had to get a bookish tattoo, what would it be? I would not get a bookish tattoo. I'm not really a tattoo person. Although I guess the bookish tattoo that I liked the most was, I knew someone who got the tattoo that the main character in James Robinson's Starman from the 90s. I knew someone who had the tattoo that character had done on himself. And I thought that was cool. I wouldn't do it myself though. Not. Question number 9 is, if you had to pick one book to read forever, what would it be? I feel like the largest book with the most content that I have is this Complete Works of Shakespeare that is upstairs, and I'm not going to hold it up because it's massive, but is it cheating to pick that? Question number 10 is, Funko asks you to design its newest line of Pops. What characters would you like to see made into Funko Pops? I'd love to see products made of the characters from Black Sails, which is a recent TV series that just had its 4th and final season earlier this year, which is actually kind of book related because it's a prequel to Treasure Island. Although unlike Treasure Island, this is not quite so kid friendly. No. Very violent. But I would love to see these characters made into Funko Pops. I would buy that. I would put them on my shelves along with my video game toys. Alright, that is the final question. And the next thing to do is to tag some people. So what I'm going to do is I will tag the last 2 people who commented on my last video. So there you go, tag you're it, but if you don't want to, don't feel any pressure to do the tag. Anyway, thanks again to CR Flames Fan for tagging me, and that's it for now. Ciao!